everybody, it's Gwen. Welcome back to my channel. Today, as you guys saw from the title, I'm going to be talking about some of my favorite comfort albums. I got this idea pretty recently, kind of spontaneously, because we're on the third week of classes. I'm not gonna lie, it's been stressful. The first week and a half to 2 weeks was really rough, specifically last week, the second week of classes. I don't know, my headspace was just not great. I was just very stressed. I had a lot of stuff to do. And I found myself coming back to certain albums, not even realizing exactly why until I kind of came out of that bad week and realized that I was subconsciously trying to comfort myself with the music I listen to, which sometimes you know and sometimes you don't. You want to put on something hopeful and happy, it's comforting, you get it. But the albums I chose, not all of them were necessarily positive, but I realized after the fact that they were my comfort albums. They have been with me for years. Some actually have been with me only for about a year, but they're there for me. And they make me feel whole again. So I thought this could be kind of a fun video idea, maybe make this a series. I'm sure I could add more to this list. So I have 10 comfort albums today on this list I'm going to talk to you guys about, just share my quick thoughts on, and I'd love to do a part 2 of this because there are certainly more of them, and I'm always, getting into new music, and things are always adding to this list, even if I don't know it, which I think is interesting. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into the video. So my first comfort album, ding ding, shocker, Peripheral Vision by Turnover. If you follow me on Spotify and you see what I've been listening to recently, I've been listening to Peripheral Vision so much in the last week, which is kind of weird because a lot of you guys know that I like to put Turnover albums and kind of categorize them within their own season, and Peripheral Vision is not my winter Turnover album altogether is. I usually listen to Peripheral Vision more in the fall, but lately, I don't know, it is comforting. I've been listening to this album since 2016, and I was a sophomore in high school when I found this album, and I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember that spring of 2016 when I found this album. Little sophomore me, I would just do homework to this album, and it calmed me and soothed me. And since then, this album has meant so much more to me, not only in terms of lyrical content, but just Turnover is nostalgic. This is a very nostalgic record, which you will kind of see that's a pattern a lot of these are, but it's just a soothing album, and you guys know Turnover, they're more indie, relaxing side of everything, so I can just put this on in the background and it's comforting. So I just love this album so much. I know a lot of people are like, oh, if you're gonna put on this album, you're probably crying with it. I do cry to this album, but not every time I listen to it. I just realized that it is a comfort album for me, and I can put it on and, headphones, sit back, and I feel better, So definitely had to put this one on the list. Coming up next, we have another obvious one. I feel like a lot of these honestly are obvious if you've been on my channel for a while. I had to put on Copacetic by Knuckle Puck. Obviously, this is another album I've been listening to since before 2016, late 2015, early 2016. If you know that at home I have this album framed, but this record just means so much to me. It really helped me get into pop punk and just more of kind of modern pop punk bands. And a lot of the songs are about kind of finding yourself, and I do associate a lot of them with Chicago because I associate the band with Chicago, obviously. So if I'm in a bad mood and I want to just kind of get out of my apartment, go take a walk, if I put on this album, I find that a lot of the songs really resonate with me now, almost as much as they did back then when I was 16, which is crazy because I'm almost 21, which is insane. I love albums like this, that the songs almost create different meanings for you as you get older, and I mean songs like Evergreen and Pretense, even slower ones like In Your Crosshairs, it's comforting to me and it gives me strength. Pretense comes on and I'm like, you know what, I'm that bitch and I'm gonna get through all this shiz, we're gonna defeat this stress, and it just gives me willpower and it makes me feel grounded and whole, and I love this record with my heart. My third comfort album is Chemical Miracle by Trophy Eyes. This album I've been listening to since summer of 2017. That's when I really got into it. I will always associate this album with summer of 2017, which has pros and cons to it. There was some bad shiz happening that summer, some people I unfortunately associate these songs with, but I don't want to. But I also saw Trophy Eyes for the first time that summer. I went to my first Warped Tour that summer. Vama and I kind of started changing our listening habits into harder things. Trophy Eyes was pretty hard for us at that point. They're not to me anymore, but they were to us back then. And Yeah, I mean, like I said, this album also is sad too. You have songs like Heaven Sent, Daydreamer, Chlorine. Like, this is not a happy album, but it's a comfort album because it's been there for me for so long. That seems to be a common denominator here. I love the transitions of this album. I love the diversity of sounds. Like, Daydreamer is a slower song on the album, I guess. You know, it kind of pulls everything together, but then you have songs like Suicide Pact, and I want to start dancing and saying all the words and like getting really into it, you know. And I love the flow of this record, and it just brings me back to summer 2017, and it's comforting. My fourth comfort album is my favorite album of all time, which if you have been a long-time subscriber, you should know that is A Fever You Can't Sweat Out by Panic! At the Disco. This specifically I've been playing a lot the last week, and I don't know why, I like just forget about this album sometimes. Like, I know, you know, Panic has so many albums, and I don't listen to Panic a ton anymore, obviously, but like, I forget about my favorite album. And I forget why it's a favorite album until I put it on, and then I'm like, oh my god, this truly is a masterpiece. It reminds me, obviously, of like kind of like my original emo phase in like 2015, 14 when I discovered this album, but also it is so theatrical. It reminds me of like my theater days, and these songs just always cheer me up. I don't care what mood I'm in, literally play any song from this album, even play like I Write Sins. I was literally like Swiftering the other day, and I Write Sins came on, and I was bopping to it so hard. It was great. You know every word of this album. It is so much fun to sing the words to these songs because they are so fast and they just tell stories, and yeah, this is the beginning of like my emo phase. So it's really comforting. These albums just like kind of remind me where I started in terms of like finding my own music and things like that, and I don't think I'll ever stop jamming to this album. The next album is another one by Panic, and that's pretty odd because I've also been listening to this one a lot as well. This is almost a 360 different vibe from Fever, but I love the Beatles influences. I love the like nature sounds. It really gives me like a nature vibe, not just because there's flowers on the cover, but you know, they talk about songs like Behind the Sea, songs like Folkin' Around, which has like this old record sounding vibe to it. When he's like, you remind me of a former love that I once knew. You know, like, I just love this album so much. This reminds me of summer 2015. I mean, I associate it a lot with summer 2015, but also just that same kind of time period, 14, 15-year-old me. This other album, I forget why I loved it so much, and it's just such a unique album for Panic. There's nothing like it. And you can hear Ryan Ross singing, which also takes me back, you know, when he was in the band and all that. So it's just good vibes. This one really, I think, has a lot of positive messages in it and is a relaxing comfort album. Like, after a long day, I would put this on, and you got some bops. You got 9 in the Afternoon, you got some boppier songs, but a lot of the songs are just very carefree and comforting, and I love it. The next album is my favorite Fall Out Boy album, which is Foley Ado, which you also probably knew if you've been watching me since I've, you know, lived back home, because I have a big Foley Ado poster, and nobody appreciates this album by Fall Out Boy. People are truly shocked when I tell them that this is my favorite Fall Out Boy album. For some reason, this album is underrated. I'm not quite sure why. I think it's great, and this was actually the first record I ever got, and I got it Christmas 2015, and I literally played it on a loop. I don't want to say I overplayed it, but I played it so much during like probably a 2-3 month span after Christmas that I didn't come back to it for a long time after that. I don't listen to Fall Out Boy a ton anymore, unless I'm like really in kind of the old classic emo mood. But songs from this album have been coming on recently, like The Shipped Gold Standard and Disloyal Order of Water Buffaloes, which I love. Like, the flow of this album is beautiful. It is a masterpiece. It also has a lot of theatrical songs in it as well. Obviously, we've also got $20 Nosebleed, which features Brendan Urie, so like, you know, that was amazing to me when I was 15. I thought that was the coolest thing ever that he featured on a Fall Out Boy song. But this album just takes you on a journey, and I love those little bears on the cover, you know, like, it just is really a comfort album for me. There's a lot of fun songs. You've got like Coffees for Closers, where he's singing about, you know, put your hands up in the air like you just don't care. Like, it isn't as much of an emo Fall Out Boy record. It's more of a rock record, I think, which I think is why I really like it, because it's not so much about them whining about like classic emo topics. I think it took a totally different turn from their other things at that time, and I love it. My next comfort album is Badlands by Halsey. I mean, same deal. Like, Haley and I found Halsey when we were sophomores in high school, like early sophomore year. Whenever like Badlands came out, she showed it to me. I believe it was 2015. What happened in 2015? I really had a musical awakening in 2015. But she got me into Halsey. Y'all know the story. We really fell in love with her together. And you know, this album was on repeat. I keep seeing TikToks about like people romanticizing 2015 and they always show this album. But then this album sort of gets hate now. Like, oh, what, you're still listening to Badlands by Halsey? Like, this ain't no Crybaby Melanie Martinez shiz. Like, this is a good album. And yes, Halsey has matured so much since then. She's my favorite female artist. But I think that this was a great starting point for her. I mean, it's the same thing with going back and listening to the Room 93 EP. It just takes me back. It takes me back personally, but I also feel like I've almost grown up with Halsey in a way too, because I've been following her for 5+ years, that we've been with her through so many new things and challenges. We watched her grow up with us. And so like this takes me back to her 19-year-old self, 19 and 20-year-old self, which at the time was my 15-year-old self, right? So it's really fun, I think, and you can hear the way she sings is different. And I mean, I literally used to listen to this on loop. I loved Castle, I loved Gasoline. I mean, all the singles are great, obviously. Roman Holiday, like this entire album. I'm not talking about the deluxe version, by the way. I'm not talking about the one on vinyl, though I do love that, but the original deluxe album with all of the songs, I don't know, I think it's really fun to listen back to. I've been really obsessed with listening to Manic and all her new stuff, but I think it's fun to come back to her first album because there's still bangers and it just is a different world. It's a different era. My next comfort album may come as a shock to some of you. It kind of surprised me when I was thinking about it, but songs by it came on in the last few days and I was like, okay, you know what? The Weezer are comforting to me sometimes. And that is the White Album by Weezer. This is the first Weezer album I truly fell in love with. You know, I did a reaction video to it, I think in 2016, and that kind of blew up, and the rest is history, as we know. But I've been listening to a lot of the new Weezer album, which I really love, and I'm planning on doing an album review on it soon. But the White Album is really where it started for me in terms of falling in love with an entire Weezer album and not just like the hits from Pinkerton and Blue Album and all of that. The White Album is complete summer vibes. It's actually weird for me to listen to it now, and certain songs by it have come on in the last week and it feels weird. It feels like I'm cheating on winter. Like, it's such a summer album, I don't feel right listening to it now. But 2016, like Vama and I remember too, she really got into this album as well. It reminds me of when we drove to Woodstock with her mom in the spring of 2016. It was the time, like I said, when we were obsessed with this album. We were listening to it the whole ride there. And like something about listening to Weezer and then like going to Woodstock, like the famous Woodstock, New York, and like walking around and it's all peace signs and like hippie vibes, and like literally one of our Instagram captions was us and the caption was Summer Elaine and Drunk Dory, like, which is a song from the White Album if you didn't know. Like, that's a vibe that I miss. Like, it's just nostalgic for me. And I think it's a very positive record. It's almost like a surf rock record in a way. Do songs like California Kids and Summer Elaine and Drunk Dory. Even like Jacked Up is really fun with the piano. This is a fantastic album all around. You hear the beach vibes. It's a good time. And it's just like a fun record and just reminds me, I think, of simpler times. Like, I think during all this I'm stressed and I'm worried about the future and school and everything, and these albums just bring me back to simpler times, which is comforting to me, you know? So I love it. Okay, our second to last comfort album I'm going to tell you guys about today is Life's Not Out to Get You by Neck Deep. This was also kind of, you know, the pivotal point in my pop punk roots. They were my first pop punk show. Y'all know AP Tour 2016. I was also listening to this at the same time I really got into Copacetic by Knucklepuck, and I was just really getting into more modern day pop punk. Like, I knew of All Time Low, I kind of knew of the classics, but at this point Neck Deep was still on the rise, and this was more like skater pop punk for me. And I was really vibing with it, and I was really surprised at the time. I didn't think I could get into something like that, or that I would get into it as much as I did. And I remember going to like PE in sophomore year and running on the track, listening to like Threat Level Midnight and Serpents, and I was like, oh my god, who am I? This is so cool, this is so fun. But like, it kind of was, once again, like part of my musical awakening, and it was fantastic. Like, once again, simpler times, getting excited to get the vinyl and go to my first real pop punk show with my dad and see Neck Deep, and like, it's great. And also I think that this album has so many good messages. I was listening to it last week, and you know, the part where he's like, life's not out to get you despite the things you've been through, you know, like the message of the album came on. And it still reigns true to this day, even with everything going on in the world. Life is not out to get you, folks. We're gonna get through it. It kind of seems like a childish message to believe now when you're older, but I wholeheartedly believed it in 2016, and I don't know why I stopped, because it's true. As you get older, you have more shit to deal with, I get it, and it seems like the world is so against you and everything's falling apart, and, you know, 16-year-old me, like, the problems I had were so minuscule when I think of everything going on now. But Ben and the rest of the Neck Deep boys are still right. Life is not out to get you, and so I really just love jamming to this album, and it reminds me of, like I said, a simpler time, but it also just reminds me that a lot of the things in that album still reign true to this day. And my final comfort album is, I think, the only one that is not from years ago, and that is Ley Lines by Floor. A lot of you guys know a ton of these songs from this album was on my top songs of 2020. I discovered it last year. I knew a few of the songs from Journeys the year before, but I fell in love with the entire album summer of last year. And I didn't expect this to be on this list. This is not the first thing I would think of, but songs from this album have randomly come on, and it is a comforting album. It reminds me of the summer. The songs are very, like, indie and electronic and fun. Like, it kind of reminds me of, like, spa vibes or, like, by the pool in Vegas vibes. It's very atmospheric in a way, and it kind of just takes you away from your problems. It almost lifts you up in a way. I feel very connected to the sounds of this album. And yeah, you know, I'll put on songs even, like, dancing around, and I will start dancing. Like, it is a light beat, it gets your feet up. I feel like this is an album that everybody would love. It's a very feel-good record. Highly recommend you listening to it. This is probably a good album to listen to, like, in the morning, I feel like. It's not too heavy, it's not too crazy, but it has positive vibes, it gets you up, it puts these, like, nice sounds in your brain, and I like it, and it's very comforting for me. There you guys go. Those are 10 of my comfort albums. I really enjoyed filming this. Sorry if I feel like I'm very rambly. I haven't done like a sit-down video in a hot minute, and I'm just kind of getting back into planning to film things for you guys with school being back. But with all the stress going on, I've noticed that these albums have been there for me, and I would love to know down below in the comments, what are the albums that you guys believe are your comfort albums? What albums have been there for you through it all or through many years and bring you some nostalgia and good memories, because I would love to know. But other than that, be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it and subscribe if you were not already, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye!